So we're back in the in betweens. The episodes that fit in between seasons as we prepare for our next experience of Through the Looking Glass podcast. The topics here are ones that will take you down the rabbit hole, not knowing where we're going to end up. But one thing's for sure, you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. Hey, everybody, welcome to, thank God for editing, Through the Looking Glass podcast. ah, yeah, this is our one of our in between episodes, and yeah, I don't want to give too much away what's coming up in season 4, even though I kind of just did a little bit, just a little bit. But this is a conversation that I'm excited to jump into. This is with Daryl from All Things Black podcast. I can't do his voice, obviously. There would be something wrong with me if I could go down that low. Um, Before we jump into this topic, tell the wonderful listeners everything that's going on and all your secrets that's about to be released.
Oh, that was for me.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
you and me
okay.
here in
Um,
this room,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess.
Thank you again for wanting to collab and have just a general conversation about some things that's been circulating in through the airwaves and whatnot. So yeah, just it's always always thank you. But I've been on hiatus and trying to work some things out in the background and trying to be a little bit more efficient, stuff like that, like yourself. And yeah, but I'm excited for what is going to come up, and I'm not going to actually put it out there yet, but stay tuned.
Yeah, I guess you guys don't get the secrets. I know what it is. I'm special. And if you guys could see, if I was doing this video, which I'm not because I don't like to be compared and looking like I am not up to par, but he has some really spiffy things going on within his video. But yeah, you guys have to stay tuned and watch his Instagram and his Facebook page and his website and like my stuff because I'll be sharing all that information too. So I'm
Yeah, actually,
excited.
you're going through a transition right now, so I'm excited about that. Myself, and just to be able to hear what you got coming up, and then see the different, pod art and that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to see what you come up with.
Yeah, we got some really good stuff coming. And you know what they say about creatives? If somebody does something wrong or does something uh not not nice to a creative, you will see it again in some of the most creative ways. So I'm excited. I talked to you some too about how I was really looking at a true crime podcast and thinking about how to do that. And situations occurred where I'm able to merge it all into season 4. So if you are listening and wondering about some of that stuff, that Mad Hatter series is basically like a relationship merged into a true crime podcast where we're going to be looking at some of the most dangerous pathologies and personality challenges and how to identify them in a relationship, how to know what to do if you are in a relationship with some of those individuals, and some real world examples of what that could look like. So I'm excited about that and some other stuff that I will be dripping throughout the social media channels as we get closer to August 8th. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
That's
So
a
we're
big
about
date.
to,
That's a big date,
it
August 8th.
is,
That's a huge date. So for the
especially in
listeners, you got
numerology, right? Mm-hmm.
well, I'm not into that, but but I'll let you have that one. But that's a huge date though, because again, this is a kind of a new launch for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's already done some phenomenal things. So anybody that's listening right now, you just want to make sure you keep abreast of what she's doing, and keep up with her, because again, I believe this one is going to be a little bit different, a lot different actually, and it's kind of raining outside right now.
That's even perfect. It kind of sets the mood, right? You might even recognize some people's voices because I will need a voice actor for certain areas. So We'll see. We'll see
Yeah,
who I
yeah,
can talk into
that
that.
was a nice thunder crack. So it's lightning out there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, we better hurry up because I know. Well, you're not from the deep south because I know back in the days, like when it's lightning, lights are all off the phone,
Oh
everything.
yeah, oh yeah. That still applies.
Oh, okay. So let's get moving before you lose electricity. Hopefully that won't happen. So Daryl sent over a video, and you know what? Go ahead and you package this video for us. What it was talking about, because I'm ready to go. I got so much to talk about on this one. So go ahead and kind of what stood out to you, what it was, what stood out to you, and why you thought this was going to be a good topic.
Oh, that's some good thunder out there. So what it was essentially, I'm gonna try to summarize it the best I can. I was trying to find a way to put it up on the computer or to play it, but I'm not able to do that. But anyway, it was a young black woman. It was two actually, but the one that was leading the charge, he was essentially saying that, in her own way, that sometimes you can. Oh man, how did she say it? That sometimes a woman can, um, be in essentially be wrong and be in some toxic, relationships, even with, among not just men, but with her own, um, gender, family members and stuff like that. And sometimes they accumulate these relationships along the way, not understanding that they need to filter out some of these relationships that can be very toxic to them, and really allow them to grow essentially. And the one young lady was talking about how, how could it be that, I'm the one basically, um, how did she put it? Oh, lights are flickering. Um,
They
Essentially,
are.
she was
So
saying that, yeah, she was saying that basically like attracts like, right?
there you
And
go.
yeah, like attracts like. So she was saying essentially, well, how can that be? I'm good. I'm not the person that's smoking, drinking, cursing, anything like that. But my partner or people that I hang around, are like that. And she was basically saying, yeah, because at the core of you, that's what you are. So you're pulling that energy towards you, right? Even though you might view yourself as not the toxic one or not somebody that is, essentially, not a bad individual, it's your frequency or your energy that at the core of you that is really pulling these individuals into your sphere of activity. So that's what it was in a nutshell. That's kind of what I sent you.
Yeah, and I've spoken on this so many times, and not just in podcasting, just when I'm counseling, when I'm working with victims to say, you meet who you are, and the question is, okay, so I'm the bad guy, and it's a lot to digest because when that was presented to me, I was like, that's BS. Like, there's no way I'm like that guy. You know what I'm saying? And it was more of you have to look underneath. Like, no, I might not act in certain behaviors, but like you said, like attracts like. And the question is, why are these behaviors occurring? When you get to the core, you're going to see something very familiar. And I know for me, I was attracting unavailable dudes because I was emotionally unavailable. And it took that experience to say, hmm, I like long distance relationships because I don't gotta see you all the time. I I can claim being an introvert because I don't want to talk because maybe I just don't want to talk to you all the time. And there's a level of emotional unavailability that I had. And then to say somebody else was emotionally unavailable to me, I'm a hypocrite. So there's that space of being honest with yourself. One thing I also know is, or I also talk about, you also attract your level of healing, right? So
Oh, that's
if
a good
I'm doing the work on myself and your partner's not doing the work, that relationship, good luck with keeping that going.
that's a good one. But you're absolutely correct. Like attract like. Um, and she mentioned something that, what was his name? Reverend Ike. That's who she brought
Hmm.
up. She was saying Reverend Ike basically said, "You meet yourself. You meet you."
Yep.
Right. So whoever you're around is your mirror image. Right. So essentially, if you don't like something that they're doing, It's really a reflection of you, to be totally honest,
Right.
because you chose that frequency, you chose that spirit. And at the core of you is something that you are still grappling with. Maybe it's some old toxicity that is sitting up in the system somewhere from old relationships or something that you did not unlearn, right? And it's still pulling at you from outside of you, right? And it's crazy because you're able to see that in a reflection of the individuals that you're around, you know. And she really done that. And it was interesting because it was the sisters that were saying it. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me in that whole conversation or that whole bit was the fact that the young lady was talking about how sometimes women have these relationships and they don't know how to filter these specific relationships out. You hold on to the exes, you hold on to old friendships, you hold on to old relationships that don't necessarily bear fruit, but it's there for some reason, for whatever reason. Now, I don't know why it's there, but she said basically, that sometimes women don't know. And now this is her, is a woman saying that sometimes women don't know how to filter out their own relationships, especially when it's a toxic relationship.
Also would speak to, and for individuals listening, the example that was in the video were women, but this is for men as well. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to go with what you know. At the end of the day, you're going to go with what or who reflects your energy. And if you can definitely vibrate right out of somebody's existence if you work on yourself. And I know for me, when I was able to face somebody who was, when I tell you this person was me just as a man, that was some difficult stuff because this dude would do stuff and still does do stuff on a daily to piss me off. But it had to take the moment of saying, okay, but why? Why? And then when I started identifying, like, whoa, this person, when this person does this to me and I get mad, but I do the same thing to other people. And that was some humble pie because you put yourself in the space of holier than thou. I'm not like that person. I don't do this to to
That
people out
part right
here.
there.
Right. But once you really look at the situation, and a lot of people won't talk about it. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I have some toxic traits. I absolutely do. But there's an awareness of them. So now when they pop up, I can
You can
try to
manage it.
try to check them at the door.
Oh boy, that was another one.
I heard
Yeah,
that
so
was
you can
perfect
manage it.
timing because it
Oh
made me
yeah,
sound like a
wasn't
villain.
it? But but I said back today as I was listening to those young women, and you're right. Once you start the healing process and begin to work on yourself, a lot of stuff begins to drop off. Basically, a lot of what we're holding on to. I was thinking about it earlier, and I was thinking about the fact that what it is that we hold on to it the same way we address our comforts in food. It's like comfort food. These toxic relationships are like comfort food. I'm familiar with it. I know what it is. I know I'm going to get out of it. I know not too many people's going to check me about it because they're toxic and they're allowing me to basically be the same way, right? So it's really like comfort food. I'm soothing my wounds with the toxicity that's around me.
It's
However,
easier.
right, it's easier. However, I don't like it. There's a part of me that has a disdain for it, but it seems that I'm trapped in it and I can't necessarily get outside of that until I begin the actual healing within myself.
That's very right. That's true. And let's even look deeper into some of these relationships that people would say would be abusive, right? Because I'll hear this all the time where you're saying I'm abusive too. It's looking into the layers of that statement. Are you abusive? Sticking with a person who is doing this to you, you do have a level of abuse for yourself. We're not saying you're going out there and you're doing these behaviors, but it's turned around back on you. And I tell people all the time, you yourself is probably the most abusive relationship you'll ever be in. The stuff you think
Damn.
about yourself, the stuff you say to yourself on a regular basis, you gaslight yourself. Like, I honest to goodness, I tell people this all the time. Your relationship with yourself is probably the most abusive relationship you'll ever be in. Because let's be honest, like,
Wow.
yeah, no, let's sit for a second. Let's let that sit. But some of the stuff you think about yourself, like if people are being honest who are listening, some of the stuff you think about yourself, you wouldn't say that to somebody else. You wouldn't. Like I probably have 10 negative thoughts about myself probably within the first 2 hours I wake up. I didn't finish something. I didn't do something. This isn't good enough. Look at me. What am I doing? Blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't say that to somebody else.
No, you wouldn't. No,
And that's something you
I
got to
totally
think
get
about.
that. I totally get that. I totally understand that. You know, you're right. You're absolutely right. We do inflict those type of abuses on ourselves before anybody else. Now, I used to have a friend that say nobody can beat your ass better than you.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
we kick ourselves in the behind just about all the time. And you're right. And it's like when you're in that negative headspace, it's kind of easy for anybody else that's outside of that to come in and then add to the negativity
Right.
that's already in your head, right? So that's deep. I got to carry that with me. You're right. You're right.
Right. And until we actually get serious about fixing our own wounding, it's going to be so much easier for someone to come in and add to it. And I tell people too when I'm doing work with them is we have holes, wounded holes. And if we don't heal those, we're going to seek people who will fulfill those spaces. And until we fill those spaces in us, we're going to keep getting the same dude or the same chick just in a different body because it's not the exterior you're looking for, it's what they're doing for you internally. And if you're wounded and that person is supporting that wound, as if that person is familiar to that wound, you're going to be attracted to that person until you deal the healing to fix it. And that comes to that situation where you can have somebody who meets somebody who can be a healthy partner, who can be somebody who can help them and pour life into them, but they'll go straight back to somebody who's abusive, who's disrespectful, because they haven't worked on that wound. And again, it goes back to you will maintain your level of healing. And even if you meet somebody who can assist you, it's not going to last because you can't maintain that frequency and that match because you're not the same
Right.
when it comes
That's
to a
correct.
frequency level.
That's correct. No, you're absolutely correct on that. And that's deep. You know, you can't maintain the level of intensity with the same with that frequency that that individual is on. That's healthy. That's thinking right. That's doing right by themselves and stuff like that. Pretty soon, they're either going to feel the level of frequency that you're on. It's going to be somewhat of a battle. It's going to be like an enemy combatant, so to speak, and they're going to not want to actually stay around you because
Right.
they can feel that you are now draining their frequency when they were
There
on
you
a
go.
level of positivity and everything else, and then you come in and you're just become get to you're so draining that they're just like they either gotta either throw their hands up or just be very frank and upfront with you about what you're doing, right? That is causing damage to everything else.
That's right. And an example of this too, outside of relationships, would be people who win the lottery who end up bankrupt within a few years because they can't match that frequency of that amount of that level. And money has its own frequency, and that's a whole nother discussion. But they get it, they weren't ready for it, and now they lose it. It's the same thing when you find, and I think we talked about this in another podcast too, where the right person might come into your life, but you're not ready for it. You can't maintain it because you're not at that level yet. Or so you go back to what you know. So the question is, how do you, if somebody's listening and it's like a light bulb moment right now, and they look at all their previous partners and they're like, yeah, this is the same person, just in a different body. I might need to do some work on myself. What would be the first steps you would suggest that someone does?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think that is going to depend upon the condition or the mindset that that individual is in. We always talk about therapy, 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 but again, what is it that the individual believes that they need to work on? Do they know that their toxic traits, like you talked about earlier? Do they know the level of negativity do they have, and do they embrace it? Do have they accepted that part yet? So it's kind of difficult to kind of say what they work on. What should they work on first, especially if they have not acknowledged it. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, it's really revealing what you were talking about earlier, and then we go back and we talk about the video that I sent you and everything, and just
And I'm
really
gonna share
really
that
be
video
reflected.
link too.
Yeah, yeah, really, reflect upon the fact that we are literally um, walking contradictions when you when you sit back and you think about it. Because here we want something positive to be in our life, and at the same time we're holding on to the comfort food that I mentioned earlier with these negative relationships, and also the abuses that we superimpose upon ourselves by thinking all kinds of negative things and stuff like that. That, yeah, that's yeah, I got to sit back and re-listen to this one right here. I think you said quite a bit.
Yeah, and when you sent the video, it just spoke to me because I this is something that I talk to so many females about, and sometimes men, but most of my clients are females, where it's we really have to do that inside evaluation. Why are we attracting the same types of people? And some of these conversations are painful. I'm not gonna lie. To have somebody say you are the issue, like who wants to hear that? Like Daryl, you're the problem.
Right.
Like,
But you know what's weird about but you know what's weird about that though?
mm-hmm,
Even sometimes we know we're the issue. We just don't want anybody to point it out. It's like we want to walk around completely
mm,
invisible, right? With our toxicity and everything, we want to walk around completely invisible, and act like nobody acknowledges that, nobody sees it, right? So we
mm-hmm,
because the change is the biggest thing, right? So trying to change from what we feel is so familiar and so comfortable is hard. It's hard.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to do that work. So it's like, please
They
don't look
think
at
it's
me. Please
easy,
don't see me. Don't
right?
see me for who I am in the moment. Don't look at me, because if you truly see me, you might see me in all my frailties and all my faults and everything, and that means you're going to actually do something about it. You're going to tell me about my
Mm-hmm.
frailties and my faults, possibly either to damage me or hurt me, or maybe even to make me a better individual or person.
All right. So what happens when let's just hypothetical a hypothetical individual we're talking to, and they have had a series of relationships that with toxicity, and now they're moving into a relationship where that's not there. I have also run into individuals, and we talked about trauma bonding in some previous episodes as well, but I have run into situations where when it's not chaotic, when it's not a fight, they get bored. It's like, I need something, so I'm going to make it toxic because this is boring. And I'm like, maybe because it's healthy. So what?
Well,
So
to me,
there, that's the
that kind
issue.
of, yeah, to me that kind of stems back. Excuse me. That stems back to your upbringing, right? Was your environment chaotic when you were coming up? Did you know nothing but loudness in that environment? Did you not experience any kind of level of peace? Did you not, um, when music was played, was it jazz? Was it opera? Was it anything with a symphony? You understand what I'm saying? So if everything in the household and everything in that environment was very chaotic and everything, then that's what you're gonna, that's essentially what you're gonna be used to. So you will get bored because peace. When you have a level of peace, and you don't require these external things or whatever to stimulate you, yeah, you'll get bored really really quick, and you'll start doing things to sabotage that peace.
Right, right. And I had someone tell me early in a relationship that all females are chaotic, and I took offense to that because one thing I can't do is chaos. Like, I will leave you high and dry on the road, on the side of the road. I can't do chaos. I'm not saying I've ever left anybody on the side of the road. Could I? Absolutely. I mean, at least I'm honest. But I can't do chaos. So for someone to tell me all females are chaos, I took offense to that. But the more I watched his experience, every woman in his life up until I came in the picture was chaos. They were. And I'm like, now I get it. Now I get it. But the question is, when somebody's experience is all they know is that, and they meet somebody who's different from what they have kept telling themselves over and over again, how are we supposed to, because I don't feel it's up to me to represent the non-chaotic females. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to be me, and then you figure it out that all females aren't chaotic. But for the person whose experience has been all one way, so they don't have any other example to compare to, so they're going to attract
That's
chaos.
the
How do you
thing.
get somebody out of that?
That's the thing, and that's the difficulty. That's the part where we're talking about the therapy. That's the part where we're talking about getting a different blueprint, a different perspective, different things that will show you a little bit different. It's just like a person that's been confined to, the ghetto for the sum total of their existence, right? As soon as they see something outside of that, as soon as they begin to travel outside of that, then all of a sudden you can see that there are barriers in their guard begins to get let down because they're experiencing something totally new, something fresh. That's why it's always required for a lot of people. A lot of times, if you have the means to go ahead and travel, even drive across the country, sometimes it's very therapeutic for people to do that. But again, if your existence has totally been for almost the sum total of your life experience has been confined to a particular thing, yeah, it's going to be very hard and very difficult for somebody to break up out of that. And that's why you need people to come into your life and for you to allow other people into your life that has had different experiences, right? Now, that can be challenging as well because if you don't have a firm foundation of who you are, right, you can be one of those tumbleweeds that can go, you know, anywhere because again, you don't know who you are, you don't have your own experiences, you don't have a foundation, and it could be one of those things where you can be swayed in either direction. So it's a balancing act, really what it is, but um, that's really what it is when you sit back and think about it. Most of us that have had very traumatic experiences had that has extended over to um, various relationships, and that's pretty much all we know. So when it comes to um, having a different type of experience, it feels weird, right? If it
Hmm.
really feels weird, like a lot of the current day people would call somebody that doesn't do the chaotic stuff, they'll call them lame. This individual's lames. They read books. They don't go to the club. They don't do X, Y, and Z. That individual is completely lame, right?
I'm completely
But
lame. There you go.
but right, but but at the same time, that person has a level of peace that the person that is not lame doesn't have, right? There's a person that is into that kind of stuff seems to be just a little bit more centered, and you can tell when somebody's not centered because of the chaos.
Right.
It's really reflected in just about everything that they do.
Ooh, that. There's a couple things you said before we wrap that back to the chaos and everything that they do, because that's the truth. Like, there are some people who call me, I will not answer the phone because every time they're calling, it's chaos. Every single time they're calling, it's because something is not going right. And that's where you have to ask, what are you doing? And so that's what I'm going to ask you. And just from a male's perspective, if you have a friend, family member, or whatever, who is in that, who everything they do is chaos, every relationship is chaotic or fail or toxic, how do you approach that person to say, hey, guy, it's you? Like, how do you set up that conversation? Because there might be somebody listening now saying, I know somebody just like that, because they might not be unaware. Super chaotic dude or super chaotic chick might not be aware that they're causing the chaos in their life. So how do you set up that conversation? And I'm just, from a male's perspective,
See, that's
talking to
difficult
another
though.
male.
Yeah, that's difficult though because most of the time people that are very chaotic are also very emotional. So so when you
That's true.
yes, so when you try to have a conversation with somebody that's very chaotic and you try to get them to understand with reason what is going on, sometimes it's hard to penetrate that veil of chaos because they just don't want to accept it. They're comfortable in the chaos because they feel like they function better in the chaos, right? They
Mm,
function better in everything that is. clutter field, or just things just happen, whatever, they're fine with that. But it's very difficult sometimes to have a conversation with somebody that is very chaotic, because they're not going to want to listen. And especially if you can't meet them on their plane of existence, which is with emotion, right? With emotion, then it's not gonna work a lot of times. I know too many people like that. When you try to give some type of reason to what's going on, or just try to give them a different perspective, there'll always be but, or you're not listening,
Hmm.
you don't feel what I feel, you're not X, Y, and Z, right? They always come up with all kinds of excuses instead of just sitting down and just listening to what you're trying to say with a reason. And that becomes a very difficult thing. And this is why people that are chaotic, like, they're hanging around other people that are chaotic, because it is
It
easier for
feeds their
them to be in
narrative.
that. That's right. It feeds the narrative. Absolutely, it feeds that particular narrative. Um, and that's where it becomes difficult. Here's somebody that's chaotic, undisciplined, don't have anything else, in regards to peace within their life. And then here comes somebody that is absolute peace. Sometimes that can be a good marriage, but at the same time, it's going to be a difficulty, because the peaceful individual is not going to want to deal with all of the chaos that the other individual brings. So, but yeah, when you
Yes.
that's a difficult
It gets
task.
tiring.
It
It's
does get tiring.
exhausting.
Absolutely.
Like we're doing this again? And then there's a level that the non-chaotic person, or the person, and I'm speaking from example and experience, where the non-chaotic, or the person who is just over it, is like, dude, what are we doing? Now we seem insensitive because you're not up, you don't understand, or you didn't have to go through this. Like, that's true. And yes, I'll validate, and everything you're saying is true. But how you're handling it, dealing with it, and choosing to make the same choices to keep yourself in that situation is something we got to talk about. And being the blunt friend, sometimes I lose friends being the blunt friend, but I never say something to somebody on purpose to upset them. It's always to help.
And
And
you
it's
will
always
lose
at a
friends.
point, huh?
That's the thing. That's the thing. You will lose friends, because most of the time, people that are in that bag want you to wallow in that bag with them. They want you to be the same as them, right? That way they
Right.
feel, that way you make them feel normal. There's a normalcy that you actually allow them to feel, right, and experience when you accept that, right? But when you start to hold up standards and say, wait a minute now, we're not about to do this. I love you, but we're not about to do this. We're not going down this particular road. That then they take it as, oh, well, you don't love me, you don't like me. Oh man, I'm gonna go here in the corner. I'm not gonna deal with you anymore, because you don't accept my foolishness. You don't accept my chaos. You don't accept my trouble, right? Then all
Hmm.
of a sudden you become the enemy,
Right.
right? And that's what I'm saying. It becomes difficult, and it's crazy, because I've had an experience with even older people that, um, they want to continue in that bag, even when you show them a level of reality that they haven't even thought of, right? Which is right in their face. There's a level of reality that they're sitting right in their face, and they won't accept it. And even if they do accept it, they might accept it for like a day or two or something like that, and they'll come circle right back around, because they've marinated in what you said. And even though they know what you said is correct, they still want to go back to that feeling, that chaos, right? And they'll call, sometimes they'll call you back, and they'll be like, you know what? You remember what you said? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I remember. Well, here's what I think about that. And then it starts this whole going down the same road again. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't we, I just gave you some insight as to how you can actually remedy this whole situation. And then you come right back and just disregard everything I said and put yourself right back in the same bag. It's crazy. So I don't know how you would deal with an individual like that, other than express that, maybe they need to seek out some therapy.
Right. Right. And I tell people too, when people are stressed, they revert back to what they know. So it's definitely having to change behaviors, having to change mindsets, and depending on how connected or how committed you are to those mindsets and behaviors, it can be a challenge. But And it's just human nature to go back to what you know in times of stress. You could be doing the work, but something happens and it's like, you know what? I'd rather deal with the devil I know than the devil I don't. And even though the devil's chaos, right? It's not good, but it's what I know. I don't know what's going to happen if I go through that door. Or you can't really give me advice cuz you have not lived my experience. But at the end of the day, even though that's correct, what I do know, these toxic behaviors are not good regardless of who experience you're living. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be a level of honesty, I think. And
I
that's how
don't
you
think that could
package it.
ever. I don't think it. I don't think it could ever happen. Number one, you have the echo chamber. Number two, you got people that co-sign that particular behavior, right? The trauma
Yep,
bonding,
that's true.
all of these different people around them that kind of comfort them. It's the comfort food, so to speak, in that toxicity. So when you don't have somebody around you that's going to hold you accountable and it makes you think or see it in a different perspective, the change will probably never happen, right? The change will probably never happen because again, you got so many people that are supporting that narrative. That's the biggest problem. Sometimes you got to
Enabling the
enable it.
behavior.
Sometimes you got to step away. But my thing is, you got to understand too. You know, even though you have your specific narrative, right, your belief system, you got to know when somebody's pulling your leg. You got to know when there's somebody that is enabling you with that same behavior, right? But most of us, our ego wants to be stroked. We want to be told we're right 100% of the time. We don't want anybody to tell us wrong. And as soon as they tell us wrong, then, that must not be my friend or whatever the case may be, right? So we seek out, the ego seeks out these individuals that always want to tell us that we're right. We're just like that. And that's a fool on both ends because when you got somebody that tells you you're right 100% of the time, you're not going to be able to see your blind side. You're not going to be able to see what's in
Right.
front of you, which could potentially hurt you, right? Because all you want is yes men around you 100% of the time, right? We think it's cool to have yes men around us 100% of the time telling us we're always right. And that's not how life works. Life just does not work like that. Somebody's going to tell you you're out of order. Either it's the police officer, your a significant other, a loved one, an auntie, an uncle, the law of physics, right? Gravity, whatever the case may be. Something is going to let you know that you are off base. And it's a travesty when you have the human being that is always enabling other people, or especially people like that, to continue in that space. And sometimes that creates more of a monster than anything else.
Absolutely. And also looking at people who benefit from your wounding. There's people out there who benefit when you are at that place, whatever that looks like. And you have to be honest about who's in your life, why they're in your life, and if you are pushing out some type of energy, behavior, benefit, and ask yourself, if I stop doing that, would that person even be around? Because there
That's
are
a big
people out here who
question.
benefit from your wounding.
That's a big and a huge question. If I stop doing this behavior, will these same people still be around? And most of the
Right.
time, the answer is no.
Yep. You got to look who's in your circle because that's going to give you your insight on where you're headed or where you're not. You know what I'm saying? You might, if you're friends and you guys are doing the same things you were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago, you might want to check that because something ain't right. Something's not right. I should see growth. I should see some type of change moving forward. But if you guys are meeting up and doing the same thing you were doing 10, 15, 20 years that you were doing back then, you might want to question that circle.
But the question is this: how does a chaotic individual measure growth?
That's a good question.
How does somebody that is chaotic and toxic and everything else, how do they measure growth? I mean, I get it. A lot of toxic people can earn money. You know what I'm saying? They can get wealth or whatever the case may be. But again, that's an external thing. That's not a remedy to everything. To everything. So how does somebody in that that's in that bag measure growth? And do they even
Your
consider growth?
environment, your environment and your relationships. I would say look at your relationships and look at your environment and there should be some change. There should be a steady level of growth that you can actually see, some tangible type of evidence to say, wow, if you would have met me 10 years ago, and I can say that right now, hell, if you would have met me 5 years ago, I'm almost 180 different in beliefs and viewpoints. And for me, that's how I measure growth. How I respond to something that would have had me doing a different behavior in the past. That's another way I manage growth. If it's a situation where somebody would say or do something, and my first reaction would be to delete, block, I'm never talking to you again, versus maybe I need to hear this person out. So looking at your relationships, looking at your environment, and how you react to situations in a different way would be my kind of answer to those three areas to determine if there's growth happening. If I'm responding the same way to triggers that I responded 10, 15 years ago, I'm not growing. I'm doing the same thing.
That's real. That's true. Yeah. So I mean, wow. I didn't know the conversation would go in this direction, but yeah, this is actually good. So I'm gonna make sure I go back and study everything that's been said because you're
We're just
absolutely
giving
right.
people free therapy today, Daryl.
Hey man, you know what I mean. Sometimes you need it.
Tangible.
So
They got stuff they
yeah.
can take notes on today.
Hey, hopefully they can take notes on it and be able to get some up out of it. I would love to find a way when the people listen to this to see if they'd be able to reach out to you or something like that and just give you a some type of a statement saying how these kind of conversations actually kind of help them, that kind of thing. I would love to hear some responses from your listeners to see what they've experienced from some of these conversations.
That sounds like a plan. And actually, on the website, the www.lookingglass.fans, FANS, there is an area where you can submit that type of information. It's also going to be an area where you can submit scenarios and questions directly to us that we can discuss when we go on air to talk about some of these things that are happening in real world situations. Like we can talk about our own experiences all day, but to hear other people's layered experiences and how they reacted to it, also just to get some additional insight from different people, because a lot of us think really differently. So you can definitely go to the website. You can definitely leave us a comment on our Facebook, on our Instagram. It seems like most of the people are sending messages directly through Instagram and Messenger. So I will definitely keep you posted. But I think this conversation was it was needed. I think a lot of people talk about certain areas of what we're talking about, but never go to the core issue of maybe I'm the villain, maybe I'm the problem, maybe it's me. And I would say about 100% of the time it is, because what you allow is what you choose. What you allow is what you choose. So if you're allowing someone to cheat on you, you're choosing that for yourself. If you're allowing someone to talk down to you, you are choosing that for yourself. Yeah, the other person's garbage, but you play a role in your experience, and you have to take a stand where you take that control back and don't let somebody else write it for you, right? You got to have an honest realization to say, if I don't want this to continue, I have to do something different.
I 100% agree. And again, I thank you once again for these conversations. I mean, to me, they're always enlightening. Uh, the ebb and flow is always there, and I learn something every time I had that conversations with you. So, thank you once again. And I can't wait to hear it posted. That way, I can hear it in length, and no interruptions whatsoever, so I can actually learn because life is still about learning. So, you learn wherever you go.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm always love our conversations, and I just hope, I really think this one was one that you could listen to over and over again. You'll probably hear different things that myself and Daryl said that you didn't catch the first time around. But at the end of the day, don't let someone else take control over your life. Your voice has to be the loudest. No matter what's going on, your voice has to be the loudest. And If you are tired of living in a certain way, you have to make that decision to make the change. Once you do that, everything else will start falling into place. But you have to make that decision first to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I have to change something. And that's another definition I use for change too, is when the fear of the unknown is no longer greater than the pain of staying where you're at, that's when you make a change. So people do
I
it
agree
every
with that.
day. I feel like we
I
should
agree
cue
with
Michael
that.
Jackson, the man in the mirror.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And just one last thing: the change is not always external. The change has to be,
Hmm.
because you can put yourself in different environments. It doesn't make a difference at all. But guess what? Trash always follows you if you don't pick it up. So
Amen.
um, it doesn't
And if
matter.
you're the problem,
Right,
your
exactly.
problem's going to be there wherever you go.
It's gonna follow you wherever you go. So it's not about the external; it's about the internal and doing that type of work that needs to be done within with the inner self, not the outer self, the inner self. But yeah, this has
That's
been
right.
fun. This is good.
It was so chill too. It was so chill. The chill energy.
Oh yeah,
All
you had the
right.
lightning strikes and everything.
I know I did have my thunder when I was talking about the stuff that's coming up. So I get to play villain a little bit, so that makes me happy. But again, thank you for your brain and your knowledge and your input and your insight on this topic. If you all want to follow Daryl, let them know where to find you at.
Absolutely. You can find me at the All Things Black podcast. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public, just about all the streaming platforms. And you can also pick me up on the YouTube channel, All Things Black Podcast. There's going to be more content coming, but yeah, it's a slow process right now. Like I said, I'm still working things out in the background, but there are current episodes that you can listen to. And I would say go all the way back and just start from the beginning, just listen to some of the content that's already on there and be on the lookout for more.
Absolutely. And again, you guys, thank you guys so much for being listeners and following us on this journey. Again, we are launching 0808 with season 4. A lot of updates coming through, but I'm pretty positive you're going to like it. It's worth the wait. I will be continuing to drip updates as we get closer to the date. And yeah, you guys take care, stay safe, be well.